Turn their cameras on.
Hi,
Hi.
Kylie. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
Hi, and happy International Women's Day.
Happy Women's Day. Hi.
Thank you, and same to you.
Thank you to everybody who is joining us today for our special bonus International Women's Day panel. Writing Around the Kids project is for mothers of young children to connect with writing creatively. We're currently working in partnership with a brilliant bunch of women in Hastings, in partnership with Hastings Museum and New Writing South. And we've established groups in Crawley and in Littlehampton.
So both Anna and I are writers and mothers ourselves, and we started the project having recognised how difficult it is to carve out creative time in family life.
So my name's Anna Jefferson. I'm a writer, I'm a playwright and novelist. I've written for stage and screen since 2005. I have 2 novels published, Winging It and Nailing It, both published with Orion, and I am currently working on my 3rd novel.
And my name is Sam Johnson. I'm a freelance writer. I've got an MA in creative writing from the University of Brighton. I've been facilitating creative writing workshops since 2017. I've got poetry published in a couple of anthologies, and have had work performed in the Brighton Fringe Festival. And I'm slowly writing my first novel while raising my kids.
Here at Writing Around the Kids, we celebrate women every day, but on International Women's Day, we wanted to give you a bonus panel discussion with 3 exceptional female writers who've kindly agreed to share with us their experiences of writing, as well as reading from their books. So, hello writers. I would first like to introduce our writer, Lisa Allen Agostini. She's a writer, editor and stand-up comedian from Trinidad and Tobago. Her books include The Bread and Devil Need, Home Home and Swallowing the Sky, and Trinidad Noir. She's a mother of 2 daughters and 2 dogs, and she lives in Trinidad and Tobago. And today, her book, The Devil and Bread Need, was announced that it was longlisted for the Women Prize for Fiction. So congratulations, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Kylie Dunbar. Kylie writes uplifting romantic fiction for publisher Hera Canello, and a graduate of Romantic Novelists Association's New Writer Scheme. Her debut, One Summer's Night, was published in 2019. Since then, she's written 6 more titles, including the best-selling The Borough Bookshop Holiday. One Winter's Night was shortlisted for Romantic Comedy Novel Award 2021. Kylie is also part-time senior lecturer at Manchester Metropolitan University, where she uses her real name, Dr. Kirsty Bunting, and teaches English and creative writing. And you can find her on Twitter at Kylie Dunbar. Hi, Kylie.
Hi, Kylie.
Hello, thanks for having me. Hi.
And I'd also like to introduce Rachel Walker-Mason. Rachel is a recipient of the prestigious British Citizen Award for her contribution to the arts. She's a best-selling author and mother of 2 young children. She was named Woman of the Year 2020 and is an ambassador for maternal mental health. She's named a songwriting expert by BBC Radio 4's Today programme and described as one of the most talented songwriters in the industry. Rachel is also a multi-award winning musician, currently writing songs with Grammy winners, Billboard Hot 100 artists, alumni from The Voice UK and American Idol, Emmy winners, Oscar nominees, MOBO Award nominees and Independent Country Music Association Award winners. And also on top of that, it is Rachel's publication day of her book, The Power of a Creative Woman, that she's going to be reading to us a little bit later on. So congratulations, Rachel.
Thank you.
So yeah, happy International Women's Day. How have people's days been? Has anybody done anything? Well, obviously there's some very exciting news already, but how's your day been? Has anybody done anything noteworthy or just had kind of like a good relaxing day?
I dressed up in party clothes and got in the sea with my swimming women.
Do you do that every Women's Day?
Well, we get in the sea quite a lot anyway, but yeah, we tend to have a theme for Women's Day. A couple of years ago, we were all kind of superheroes. It was the last Women's Day before the pandemic, and that was like an epic. Lots and lots of people.
How about you, Rachel? How did you celebrate your publication day? Did you do anything?
Yeah, well, I took my kids to school, so that's always nice when they're not here. Love them, but great when they're at school. And then I was I'm part of a group in Bristol called Freelance Mum, and we had our International Women's, we have a thing called Brave, Bold and Bonkers. We have different speakers. It was all online this year. And we did a little giveaway for my book as well. So someone won my book, which was really exciting. And it was just, yeah, it's a really lovely time to just hear about how amazing women are and the things that we do. It's you know, sometimes we forget, we just sort of carry on in life, just plowing on through, and then sometimes it's good to stop and think, actually we're pretty awesome as a species, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. Usually in these panel discussions we don't ask our writers to do a reading, but we thought that as we're celebrating Women's Day, we'll celebrate all your words as well. And so we've asked you all to choose a part of your book to read from. We're going to hear from Lisa first, from her book, Home Home. And so just tell you a bit about the book. Fans of Monday Not Coming and Girls in Pieces will love this award-winning novel about a girl on the verge of losing herself and her unlikely journey to recovery after she is removed from anything and everyone she knows to be home. Moving from Trinidad to Canada wasn't her idea, but after being hospitalised for depression, her mother sees it as the only option. Now, living with an estranged aunt she barely remembers and dealing with her troubles in a foreign country, she feels more lost than ever. Everything in Canada is cold and confusing. No one says hello, no one walks anywhere, and bus trips are never ending and loud. She just wants to be home in Trinidad, where her only friend is going to school and Sunday church service like she used to do. If you take it away.
Thank you. So this is Home. It actually has 2 editions. The first edition, slightly different. So this is actually the UK edition, and this is the US edition, slightly different. And this is not the book for which I was longlisted for the Women's Prize for fiction. That's The Bread the Devil Need, right? So totally different book. And when I saw in the note that was sent to the writers, you know, something about triggers, I was like, maybe, because The Bread the Devil Need is it's a great book. Everybody you know, has said it's really powerful and whatever, but it can be a little triggering. So I went instead for the other triggering book, which is about a teen who's you know, attempted suicide and trying to rebuild her life in a foreign country. So the excerpt I'm going to read, the girl, the protagonist, is in Canada and she's thinking about, you know, being at home. And I chose this excerpt because the theme of this year's International Women's Day is breaking the bias. And as a woman of color, there's a lot of intersectional biases. I did tell my husband that I have an interview. He doesn't care. So that's his voice in the background. Should be writing around the men. So yeah, so as a woman of color and as a writer of color, you know, it's very important to me to tell Black women's stories. And so this is part of the protagonist's story in Home. Home, brown skin is the norm. Walk through downtown San Fernando, my hometown, and you'll see a spectrum of complexions ranging from the palest ochre to darkest ebony. It's beautiful to me. As a child, I took it for granted. My world was full of brown people who looked like me. They lived next door, loaned me books at the library, drove the buses I rode, read the news on TV, and ran my government. I hardly ever saw white people in real life. On TV sitcoms, yeah, all the time, but not doing ordinary stuff like taking out the garbage. Being Black in a Black country doesn't mean race isn't important, though. I was a dark-skinned girl. So-and-so was a red-skinned lady. So-and-so was a brown-skinned fella. I had a neighbor everyone called Blacks because his skin was so dark. Nobody said it out loud, but skin color mattered. The lighter your skin, the more desirable you were for a job, for anything really. A light-skinned mixed-race girlfriend with long, wavy hair was the gold standard if you were a boy, no matter your race. Girls freaked out over light-skinned boys, red man, as though they were some kind of prize. Even Kiki, my best friend, said her grandmother wanted her to marry someone who would add milk to the coffee and give her light-skinned grandchildren one day. As a bony, dark-skinned girl with short, kinky hair, I felt I was nobody's first pick. Matchstick, charcoal, bun bun. Those were some of the names the other kids called me. My personal fave was Kobo, after the pitch black vultures that lived on garbage and dead dogs in the dump. In my primary school graduation class photo, I was a dark, unsmiling smudge with huge eyes, hiding in the back row behind the lighter, smiling faces. Though Kiki always told me I was pretty, I never believed her. If a dark, skinny girl with picky hair was pretty, why weren't there more people like me at home, in the advertisements on TV? Pale Indian faces adorned billboards for skin lightening cream, Bollywood movies, and rum. Light-skinned mixed-race people sold pretty much everything else, from car batteries to rum. Everybody sold rum. I have to admit, they put a lot of dark-skinned soca singers on billboards. I liked Faye Ann best. She had short hair, even shorter than mine. That's it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lisa. Thank you. We're now going to move on to our second reading, which is by Rachel, and she's going to read from her brand new book, The Power of a Creative Woman. And just a bit about that. So there are many books written about famous women who have changed the world. But The Power of a Creative Woman is a book about women just like you and me, who have overcome a variety of obstacles in their lives. This book is a collection of wisdom-infused stories written by incredible women from around the world, each sharing how they used their creativity to create the life they wanted and hopefully inspire you to do it too. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel so lucky that I know all these incredible women. I'm like, how has that happened? These inspirational people. And I thought, you need to be in a book. People need to know about the things you've done. So I thought, I'll write it. I'll write the book. So this is a little bit. Throughout my life, I've been inspired by many different women who have shown me how to be brave, kind, and tried to make a positive impact on the world. There are many books that have been written about well-known women and the impact their lives and actions have had on the world. I love these books and I'm in awe of women like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Rosa Parks, Marie Curie, Florence Nightingale, and many others. However, there are also many less well-known women making waves in their industries, improving the world and inspiring others, and we don't tend to hear those stories. We're often told, you can't be what you can't see. And for many of us, this is a major stumbling block in achieving our goals. For this reason, I created this very book to give you, dear reader, the chance to encounter women who may inspire, challenge you, and encourage you to be all you want to be. So I'm going to read a little bit from one of the women. She's called Rin, and her chapter is called The Courageous Copywriter. So in the book, I interview each person. Tell me about your background. I never set out to be a business owner, although I did a business degree. I discovered journalism in my final year, quickly winning 2 awards for my writing. I followed up my degree with a postgrad in magazine journalism, and in 2005, after graduating, I landed a job as a trainee reporter on a regional newspaper. I worked my way up through various qualifications and eventually found myself in charge of the women's lifestyle pages in the paper and a quarterly glossy magazine. Then in 2010, I went freelance, writing for a range of publications from The Guardian to Psychology's magazine. But the world was changing. Digital was growing daily, Suddenly businesses needed my skills. I didn't even really know what copywriting was back then, but I started doing it. Sponsored content for brands, to be featured on newspaper websites, blog posts, text for consumer-facing apps. It was fun using my writing skills in a different way. And then what interestingly happens in Rin's life is she's married and falls pregnant with twins. And her husband leaves her when the twins are 9 weeks old. So she's there having lost all her freelance work because she's pregnant and just about to have babies. And then her husband leaves and she has to start again. So when the children, when her girls are 2 months old, she starts her own copywriting business, as you do. And so she says that, oh, sorry. I'm going to find the bit where she says that. So she starts her own copywriting business and looks after the children all on her own. Then she is so successful that she begins hiring other people and now has a thriving business. Her girls are now 7 and she has won multiple awards and has inspired people all over the world to follow their own dreams. And she never thought that she would have ever achieved these things. She didn't think she could overcome the things that happened to her. But the fact that she has, and that she offered to put her story in my book, made me so proud, because I think we often don't see women struggling like that and overcoming difficulties in a kind of technically normal life. So that's what the book is full of, stories like that.
Brilliant. Really inspiring, isn't it? Amazing, thank you. We'll come back to that though. We're just going to we're going to hear from Kylie. Oh, sorry, I just muted myself then. Kylie's reading from Summer at Highland Coral Beach. Summer at Highland Coral Beach in 2022, the first in the Port Willow Bay series. It takes you on an impromptu crafting holiday in the Scottish Highlands and reminds us that after the storm comes the rainbow. Follow Beatrice Halliday, who has lost everything, as she begins her life again at the age of 40. Expect kisses, crafts, Kayleys, coral bays, and gentle recovery. Fans of Jenny Colgan, Mary McFarlane, and Heidi Swain will fall in love with Kylie Dunbar's heartwarming, emotional romance and Beatrice's hard-won happy ever after.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this, I'm going to read you a little extract. But first of all, I'm going to tell you what has happened in the lead up to this little passage. And then I promise the extract I'm going to read does not have these things in it. Okay. Beatrice has lost her job, her husband's left her, and she's the mother of a miscarried baby. And she's lost everything and she doesn't know how to cope. And she finds that people around her do not want to talk about these difficult things, as so often happens. And she doesn't have a way of processing her grief or her shock. And she finds herself booking a holiday in the Scottish Highlands after a few glasses of wine. And the next day she's in Scotland. She checks into her hotel, the Princess and the P Hotel, which has got a very special princess bed. That's its like gimmick bed, big princess bed. And she takes one look at the place and says, I'm not staying here. So this is what happens that the first night. And she's just woken up from a dream where she was dreaming about being pregnant, and she wakes up after that. But I promise nothing I'm about to read is going to be upsetting. Okay. She hadn't dreamt like this before and cursed her brain for conjuring up such realistic feelings. She reached for Richard on his side of the bed and, finding nobody there, curled reflexively onto her side, already crying and slowly becoming aware of where she was. The darkness in the room was cut through with silver moonlight below her. below her. Springing up in bed, her head met with the velvety material of the canopy that hung between her and the ceiling. Of course, it was all coming back to her, how she'd fought with the red-haired innkeeper so she could sleep here, just to spite his smiling eyes, just to spite herself. They've had a little meet cute when she checked in. She met this gorgeous red-headed chap who looks a lot like Jamie from Outlander, just for any Jamie fans out there. And she insisted she was going to stay the night in this ridiculous room. Swiping at her tears with her pyjama sleeve, she cursed the new irate, awkward streak she'd been lumbered with lately. It was apparently not something she could do anything about. It seemed bound to her like a suit of armour, and yet it offered little in the way of protection, and she seemed only to wound herself when she lashed out from under it. She'd worn the armour ever since the night Rich had left her. Late coming home from work, he'd eventually called to say he checked into a hotel and that he was sorry, he couldn't do this any longer, and that she had to face her feelings and get help. He'd cried uncontrollably and sounded truly unhappy. Beatrice had found, after begging and bargaining until all her pride was gone, that he was resolute in spite of his tears. She peered over the side of the bed, only to be hit by the full realization that she was up in the air, in the dead of night, in the middle of nowhere, curiously precarious. She'd been so tired as she'd hauled herself up the creaking ladder into bed after dinner, and all the effort of being cheerful and chatty, that she had forgotten to draw the curtains in the low windows. Now the moonlight was spilling across the dark, polished floorboards. What a ridiculous room. Why would anyone choose to sleep here unless they were trying to spite a smirking, eagle-eyed Scotsman who found them ridiculous? She wouldn't admit to herself that the bed was comfortable and warm like a nest, or that the moonlight carried with it the rippling effect of the water in the bay below her window and spread a kind of shimmering silver magic over everything it touched in the princess room. No, she wouldn't let herself be charmed by the outlandish room and that she'd insisted on taking just to rile and punish haughty Athol Ferguson. Athol must have some kind of sixth sense, which meant he could see her armour. He had instinctively detected her prickliness, and for some reason, he wanted to tease and test it, to feel out its boundaries. Not fair and not kind, thought Beatrice with a sniff. Well, she resolved. She'd made her towering bed and she'd just have to lie in it a bit longer. She'd be out of here soon. Over by the door stood her suitcase. There were some chocolate biscuits in there, if she dared risk the perilous descent to get them. As if I haven't had enough of men interfering and cajoling. Face your feelings, she harumphed as she made her way down the ladder slowly in the half light. Face my bloody feelings. I'm going to eat my feelings. Thank you very much, Richard Halliday. I'll just read a tiny little bit from the end so it makes sense. Seriously, who would think a princess in the pea-themed room was a good idea? It was a stupid story anyway. The spoiled prince of a faraway kingdom had his pick of beautiful women, but his family were so worried none of them were suitably genteel enough for him, they devised a test to see just how much discomfort one woman could put up with. The queen, because there's always a meddling parent, isn't there, put a pea under the prospective princess's piled mattresses. Presumably it was one of those big, dry, wrinkly ones that English grannies used to keep in jars and never eat, and not a fresh one, or it would have been a flat green splat by morning. When the poor woman awoke, she was stiff, bruised and unhappy, far from home, knowing something just wasn't right, but unsure exactly what. The princess's universe was thrown off kilter by something as tiny as a pea, and that was all the proof the stupid prince needed that she was the woman for him. Beatrice sighed, watching the waves from her window, which were now right up against the seawall, thinking how her own world had been turned on its head by a thing as tiny as a pea, only her happy ever after wouldn't be waiting for her when the morning came.
Did you make that hotel up, or does that exist?
I made that up. Oh God, if it exists, I would love that.
Absolute health and safety nightmare for the hotel.
Totally. Never get away with it.
Brilliant. So I'm not sure if we said earlier, but if you're watching and you've got any questions, if you pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom, we'll try and get to those as well. I know that there's already been one actually Rachel, just asking who the name of your friend that you were reading about.
So she's called Rin, R-I-N, Hamburg. So she's, yeah, Hamburgh. So yeah, so it's in the book.
Get the book.
Buy the book. Yeah, and she runs Rin Hamburg and Co. So she's got a copywriting business in Bristol. Yeah, and she's epic.
Thank you also to all of you for reading as well. There's something extraordinarily beautiful about hearing writing that is read by the writer. So yeah, that was a real treat. Thank you. We've got questions as well that so as we said before, we have our writing groups in Littlehampton and in Crawley, and we've just got a new group that we started up in Hastings as well. And so we've asked our the women who are in our groups as well if they had any questions for you. So we have got some questions, but as Sam says, please stick any that anybody who's listening want to in the Q&A, and yeah, and we'll just see how many we can get through. Do you want to start off, Sam?
Yeah, I'm gonna just circle back quickly to a chat we were sort of having before we went live about all the different kinds of writing that you all do, because obviously Rachel, you're a songwriter, and Lisa, you write novels, but you've also done stand-up, so that's a kind of a different way of writing. And yeah, Kylie, with your academic and your romance, so they're all quite different. So like what do you prefer, I suppose? There's a different immediacy, I suppose, with doing stand-up, that you've got the audience there and they're responding straight away, whereas with writing a book is a lot longer before you get any kind of feedback. So what, you know.
Lisa, did you say that you started writing songwriting as well?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've been a writer since I was a little girl, and calling myself a writer since I was a little girl. When I was in, like, I guess we call it Form 1 here. I don't know what you call it in England. It's the same. I don't know. But it would have been like the first year of my secondary schooling. And I used to write on notebook, on folder pages, and pass them around the class. So everybody knew I was a writer. And there'd be people like waiting for the next installment of whatever story. So I've written, I've written poetry, I've written short fiction, novels, although my novels tend to be short because I guess I have ADHD, and yeah. I've written for radio, I've written scripts, I've recently started songwriting. I was a journalist for 20-something years. I've done academic writing because I did attempt to do an MPhil in gender, and have not yet completed yet. Interestingly, my thesis is a romance novel, because I'm looking at Caribbean romance and how, like, because we tend to have this formula of the romance novel where the Caribbean is the place where people escape to. It's not where, like, the native people are allowed to experience the same kinds of things as the people who are escaping to the Caribbean to fall in love, Mm-hmm. So looking at that, haven't finished it. I'll tell you how it works out. But and why do I write in a lot of different genres? Because I really I don't know. I like writing, and once it's something that it sort of catches my interest, I want to pursue it, and I think people say I'm funny, although as a stand-up comedian, the audiences didn't always think so. But in real life, people think I'm funny. So I thought, well, I could try comedy, and I did, and I loved it. Comedy is one of the most brutally honest forms of writing that you can try, and it can be quite painful to actually find the joke out of your sad life. But that's where the humor is, So I mean, I've always just enjoyed I guess that coming back to the ADHD thing, if any of you are parents of kids who are like this, be gentle with with them. It probably is exhausting. So yeah. I'm seeing questions coming up, but I want you to know I can't get into my chat because I'm on my phone. So
Don't
somebody will
worry,
have to read out.
we'll
We'll manage that, don't worry.
Yeah.
Great.
How about you, Rachel? Like, how, like, you know, obviously your book's just been published today, and you know, when reading your bio, you work with a lot of musicians, and yeah, what do you know, what if you had a preference? Do you have a preference, or do you have to use different bits of your brain to write in different ways? How does it work?
Yeah, I think it is sort of different. It's like, well, a change is as good as a rest. It's not like, don't need holidays, I'll just do a different kind of bit of writing. So my main kind of day-to-day is co-writing with other artists, and that's why my kind of favorite things are lyrics and top lining, which is like the melody part. That's my kind of what I'm normally hired to do for various artists, so that's really fun. So it's in loads of different genres. So country music tends to have an awful lot more lyric content, a lot of more they call furniture when they describe the red boots and the truck, the pickup truck, and the, you know, that kind of the country music furniture you have in a song. You're like, ah, yes, I tell where you are now on your dirt road, and you know, that kind of your cowboy hat. And then pop stuff has a lot more whoa, whoa, oh kind of stuff in it, and there's less lyric content. So it's really nice to be able to write books as well when there's no limit on how many words you can put in a line. Like, oh god, this doesn't rhyme, and this bit, there's too many words there, and so it's really fun. I like writing books about other people more than me. Like I tend to be the one who just is ridiculous and just decides I'm gonna make a book. So this is my first book that came out a couple of years ago, so I did this in lockdown. It's called Not the Only One, and it's basically because I had horrific postnatal depression when I with both of my children, but with my first child at the time I was shooting a TV show for Sky One, I was making an album and doing all these things, and people thought I was epically successful, and actually I was just crying all the time and feeling like a total failure, and I didn't actually go for help about my mental health. I was really struggling, and I just felt so ashamed about the whole thing. And I thought at the time, I wish there was a book I could read of real stories of women and men, actually, because the dads often get postnatal depression too. I wish there was a book about coming through it and knowing that you will get to the other side. And I couldn't find one that was exactly kind of what I wanted. So I thought, oh, I'll write it. I'm ridiculous like that. So I found all these people online who had really different experiences, but have all come through it, and they were all so kind, and so they let me put their stories in that book. So that's another collection of stories of people who've come through sort of various birth trauma and losing children and things. And then one of my friends is a poet, wrote loads of, but she's had postnatal depression too, and she used to be a full book author. And when she had a child, she was like, I haven't got time for this. So she started writing poems because she could do that in shorter bursts. So I was like, that makes sense. So she put her poems in my book, and they're amazing. And I put the song lyrics in of the songs that I wrote at the time I was really struggling. And then when I was kind of coming through it and the medication was working and I had some counselling, I set up a sort of charity really called Lyrical Light, where I would go and work with groups of people who had postnatal depression, and we would talk about our experiences and then collectively write a song, write a set of lyrics about coming through that journey. And so those lyrics are in the book as well. So that was kind of everything coming together. Doing Lyrical Light felt like everything coming together, all the things that I cared about, and actually using writing to help people come through trauma and realise how far they'd come, because they'd have the lyrics on their wall quite often and they'd read them and go, oh gosh, yeah, I've really come through that time. So that's and writing is especially rewarding when you can do something like that with it. So yeah, I like all of it, but yeah, when it all comes together like that, like some kind of perfect storm, it's that's like particularly nice.
And also being able to have that, like being able to kind of trust yourself to be able to document some of these things as well, you know, to be able to, as you say, to see how far and the people that you've been working with have come, that's something that's extremely special. And yeah, it felt kind of weird to do it because I didn't want to talk about it at all. I was like, I didn't want to admit that I had a problem. I just thought, it's just having a baby, come on. And then I realized, oh, actually it's really hard and I can't control what my brain is doing. And then I realized a lot of other people feel like this isn't just me, and why should we feel ashamed of it? There's nothing to actually be ashamed of. And so being able to, you know, there's plenty of people who talk about it and write books about it and things, and I thought, yeah, let's just be open about it. And the fact that it seems to have helped some people, or helped people have that conversation with their family or go to their doctor and realize that it's actually, and I think over lockdown, maternal mental health issues increased massively. It was like 7 out of 10 women had postnatal depression rather than 5, or it did increase massively because you had so much less support. And so people tended to contact me about the book then, and I was like, just put it in libraries and have copies, just because people felt so isolated, and really you do feel quite alone as a parent sometimes as well. And so yeah, it feels kind of worth going through something hard if you can do something positive with it. Sort of, it's a weird kind of thing, but yeah. Kylie, I was just wondering as well with them, so in terms of, because you write academically and also writing fiction, and I guess how do you manage those two? Do you find that they complement each other, these two different kinds of writing, or is this using two very different bits of your brain?
Is your process similar for both kinds?
No, not at all. I don't enjoy academic writing at all.
Don't tell your boss that.
Yeah, well, I think it's fairly well known. I don't know any academics who do, really, do they? It's just painful. And it takes forever. It took me 4 years to write my PhD, and that was 80,000 words long. But under contract, when you're writing a romance, you have to write 80,000 words in 6 months from starting it to publication day. So it's totally different. But I was an academic. First, I put aside all my dreams of writing and thought I'm going to have this this serious academic career, and and then I ended up writing stuff that I didn't enjoy, writing that nobody really reads. Nobody reads academic books, do they? And I find myself approaching 40 and thinking, I'm dying to write these stories. These stories are they're just on the surface, and if I don't write them, well, it wasn't an option. And I started writing, and I was typing away that first summer with a big grin on my face. And I thought, my God, I did not know you could have this much fun in front of a keyboard. I was so happy. So yeah, my process is totally different. I just sit down and write, and I plan my romance. I sit down, I write it, I get a draft done quickly. But with academic writing, you can be writing something for years, and it's quite painful. Yes, I know which I prefer.
Do you find that when you're writing novels, and that it's a relative, like obviously you said it brings you a lot of joy to do, but do you find how would you manage that around the academic writing? Are you a early, like, I guess this is one for all of you as well, like how do you juggle your writing around life? Do you find, what's your best time to write? What does your writing day look like?
I write all the time. When I'm under contract, I write all the time. So on the train, if I've got 10 minutes, because otherwise I won't make my deadline. That's it. That's the magic. That's the magic recipe. Panic.
I used to write around the kids' nap times when they were a little bit younger, because they're 3 and 4 now. So one's at preschool and one's at reception. So they're out for 6 hours a day. So it's like, joy, I'm like, oh, 6 hours in which I can do all kinds of things. But yeah, I used to write, quick, they're napping, quick, get some writing done. But yeah, it's kind of different. At the moment I'm writing a musical as well, which is about women, about female songwriters. And that's quite fun because a lot of the core music's already written, and then it's kind of weaving the story around all these different women. So that's a very different process, which is really new for me because I've not really written an original musical before. So this is a whole area that I don't know what I'm doing. So that's going to be interesting seeing how that comes out.
Oh, that sounds great. I write. I have not been fortunate enough to be a writer on contract, so I write whenever. My kids are older, but when they were younger, I had a full-time job as a journalist. I worked with the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian for many years, and actually, Home was begun while the children were on Easter holidays. My brother very kindly invited them to come over and spend like a week or 2 weeks. And as soon as they were out of the house, I was like, like a monster. And so the first draft of the book actually came out at that time. But in general, for me, I find the best time to write is one when I'm feeling like up and well, which is not always, you know. I do have a diagnosis of anxiety and persistent depressive disorder, so that I sometimes just can't write because I don't have it in me. But when I'm well, first thing in the morning is always great because my brain is fresh. I've not had a million things just like soaking in there, and then I also, it's less phone calls, no email just it's quieter. And by early in the morning, I mean like early in the morning, like 4-day morning before the sun comes up kind of thing. That's ideally, but that is the gold standard that I don't always reach.
Now, that advice to write every day, you hear people saying it all the time, don't you, write every day? But there are times where you just can't. And I think it can be quite damaging to think, well, I didn't write today. There's another day that slipped by where I didn't write. It just makes you feel worse and worse and worse, doesn't it? So I think write when you can is nice advice, actually. Write when you can. And when you can't, you lie in your bed.
Yeah.
Or go out and take the children out to the park, or because so like we think about writing as a separate activity, but it's really not. When we sit to write, we put the things that we are and the things that we've done into the work. So if we've done nothing and we are nothing, you know what I mean? Not that we're nothing, but you know what I mean? That if we've not got the material from experience or even from reading, then it's like literally trying to get water from a dry well. We need to enrich our lives with relationships where we can, with this is about writing around the kids. So our children are, trust me, if you write a book and you don't have a hint of your child in that book, you understand, they're going to be in there somewhere in some kind of textural or even way. So I think that on the days when we can't write, and okay, some days we are in bed, but on the days we can't write, but we can get out of bed, can we do something else? Walk the dog, do dishes.
A lot of the writing happens when it's not just putting words on paper, all the, like you were saying. Yeah, brilliant. I think it's really that's a lot of really interesting things coming out of that, what you were saying about the writing to deadline and so on and so on. We had a question that was in the chat actually for you, Lisa, saying asking whether you have any specific tips for writing with ADHD, because it's something that the person struggles with.
I have to say, I don't have a formal diagnosis of ADHD, but if you've met me once or twice, you probably guess, yes, this girl has ADHD. I don't really have any formal tips or anything like that. It's just like I said, if you can
Yeah.
do. Yeah, and if you can't, well, don't do something else, and yeah. And it's really useless to force yourself because I mean there is that practice that was just previously mentioned, that write every day. And that's a great practice. If you can do that, do that. But if you can't do that, I mean, don't kill yourself because you can't write every day. Some of us can't. So, just live your life. And sometimes you'll write. Might take 10 years to write a book, but it's okay. Life happens. Children get big if we're lucky.
Yeah, question of all of you, and I guess just thinking about it in terms of it being International Women's Day, and I was just wondering if any of you have like a role model or somebody that you aspire to, and it could be somebody who's like dead or alive or fictitious, or is there anybody that you aspire to?
That's actually a question I ask of everyone I interviewed in my book, and everyone was like, whoa. And it was really interesting seeing the responses. I don't know. I mean, my mum, who's amazing, and she's very kind of opposite to me in that she's much more calm. She's just got, I'm kind of like crazy with weird hair and tattoos, and she's just got this very calming force. But she's overcome an awful lot in her life. As has her mum, because they moved from India when she was very little. So I'm part Asian, not that I'm the whitest person ever, but I like skin colour. No one ever thinks I'm part Asian. And so they overcame an awful lot to just live normally in the UK a long time ago. And just the way that my mum's overcome that and various health issues has really inspired me to just be positive about things. Because like I have depression as well and things, and it's sometimes you just think I just can't, and so having someone who is such a positive little beam of light in my life, it really helps kind of balance things out. And I guess my daughter as well, who is this absolute force of nature. She's about to turn 5, and I love that thing about toddlers where they adjust. They no one's told them yet that they can't do things. No one's given them that, that we all get imposter syndrome. I think particularly women have major imposter syndrome, but she doesn't have that yet. So she said the other day to my uncle, I'm really good at, because she writes songs as well. She just sits in with me on songwriting sessions with people, and she just comes up with things, and she's really talented. She's really little. I'm like, how is this happening? And then she said, yeah, I'm a really good songwriter. And my uncle was like, a bit confident, isn't she? And I was like, yeah, good. So I kind of aspired to be more like my 4-year-old, I guess.
That's such good advice. Be more like them and all their joyfulness and all that energy. God, I wish I had an ounce of an extra ounce or two of my daughter's energy. Everybody who knows me knows exactly what I'm going to say now. My role model is Jenny Colgan, who's like 20 years ahead of me career-wise, and I just want to be her, if that's okay. She lives in a big castle in Scotland, and she writes 2 books a year, and I love her so much, and I take every opportunity to say that. But she just consistently writes books from her heart, and that's what I want to do forever. So yeah, Jenny Colgan, if you haven't read her, grab one of her books.
Castle sounds great. I don't know if I have a character person like that I can think about, but I do really consider there are a number of women that I consider mentors in my writing. So when I was a journalist, one of my most important mentors was Judy Raymond, and she's right now the editor-in-chief of one of our national newspapers, and just her excellence. She's an amazing writer. And she's just so, like, as an editor, she has this eagle eye. I mean, the first few stories I wrote for her when I was in my early 20s, I cried, I have to tell you. You get back the draft with all the red and the questions, and you're like, but, once you finish crying and okay, it's get back to this. The questions really help develop the story and really get deeper into the idea of what it is you're trying to tell the reader. So that was very helpful. And then in fiction, I was really fortunate to develop a pretty good relationship with Monique Roffey. She is an awarded, British Trinidadian writer, and she's been just really supportive. Right now, I'm working on a project based on one of her books. Actually, her book that was shortlisted for the same prize that I'm up for now, that my book was just longlisted for. And I just really admire her because she, even when, I'm a full-time professional writer, the money is not great. So, even at times when I feel like, I'm so, things are so hard, I can always think like, I know Monique went through periods where things were hard too. And she stuck with it. And she's had, like last year, her book, The Mermaid of Black Conch, it just like cleaned up. It's like just won award. And, she's just an inspiration in terms of her dedication to craft, her dedication to writing, and claiming herself as a Trinidadian writer, which is not necessarily an easy identity to claim in international publishing, because you kind of get pigeonholed, you get stereotyped, and so I really just admire her for that. There are tons of women. I've been blessed and surrounded by amazing women, so it's a really hard, it's a tough call there, but those two I would definitely mention today. And they're my dogs.
Yeah. To kind of, I suppose, flip that round a bit for you is, what advice would you give to women starting out, emerging writers starting out? Kylie, do you want to go first?
You have to find people like you and in your situation. I found the Romantic Novelists Association's New Writers Scheme and signed up for that, and I paid a bit of money to go and do that. And a published author read my manuscript and gave me pages of feedback on it. That's just invaluable, isn't it? And then I went to the RNA conference. I was awarded a little scholarship to go to that, because I was being made redundant at that point and couldn't afford it. And so they paid for me to go to the conference. And I got to meet loads of editors there and publishers. And without the Romantic Novelists Association, I wouldn't have got published. So I think find people who are working in your area, and also be on. I think Twitter is very helpful if you're writing genre fiction or sort of commercial fiction, popular fiction, to just keep up to date with all the gossip for a start, because there's a lot going on in the book world, and it's just, know who's who and what they're up to. And so when you do see a submissions thing open up, like sometimes you get a flash submission spot for a particular agent or something. And then you'll be there, you'll be ready, poised. So I use Twitter a lot for that kind of networking and just staying involved in what's going on. So find people like you and make friends with them, or you'll be very lonely.
And do you just as an aside of that, do you like block Twitter when you're working?
No, I don't. I reward myself with Twitter. When I've written 1,000 words or something, I'll get on there and I'll say, well, what's the tea today? I love the gossip. No, I can't block it. I'm addicted. Instagram, all of them. It's terrible for productivity, but it's my little treat.
So how about you, Lisa, in terms of advice to emerging writers?
I agree. I think community is so important. Although I would say social media is the devil, it is the thief of time. Seriously. But no, find a community and, I that sounds easy to say, but online there are serious and wide-ranging opportunities for you to find writing community. And that's important because when you start writing, it can feel like you're all alone and what you're writing makes no sense. Or alternately, this is the best thing ever. And you have no way to step back and get that objective kind of, well, maybe this character can be a little bit different. Maybe you could try exploring this aspect of the story instead, or in addition to. So community is really important. One of the best things that I have sort of developed over the years is a group of early readers. These are people that include my kids. Yes, my kids. Includes, old friends, and some of them are writers, but not all of them. Some of them are readers. Most of them are readers. And that feedback for me is so critical. It just makes me feel like I'm not wasting my life. It's so easy to think, oh my God, why can't, why am I like, what is the value of this thing? Who is going to read it? Is it ever going to make a difference? Is anybody ever going to buy this book? I mean, a publisher, far less a reader, you have all these questions. And for me, the early reader community that I developed is because I continue to rely on them. It's really important to me.
I agree. I think having that sense of community, so you're not kind of like writing into the dark, is just absolutely crucial, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really aware of the time. This hour seems to have absolutely whizzed by. But I wondered, Rachel, could we just quickly ask of you the same question and what your advice would be to any emerging writer there?
Yeah, I would say definitely write about what you want to write about, because you're going to be stuck in the relationship with this book for a while. And if you really don't, if you've gone off it, like a swipe left and right situation, you're stuck then writing this thing. So some people say, oh, you should write this or you should do that. If it's not something you really want to do, don't do it, because you're going to really dread writing. So yeah, write about what you care about, what you want to say, and then it will feel like a nicer, it's a hard process still, but it will feel like a nicer process because you actually care about it and will want to see it through.
Brilliant. Thank you to all three of you for sharing your writing, for sharing your experience, your advice. This feels for Sam and I like a real celebration of International Women's Day. So thank you so much. Can we have, I know that we can't see anybody who's watching, but there is a virtual round of applause from everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Can I just also thank our partners, New Writing South, and our funders, the Arts Council England. We do have another panel that's coming up on the 31st of March, and that's a Writing a Motherhood panel, where we have writers Rosie Walker, Jo Clegg and Nicola Gill. If you head over to our website on the events page, you can sign up to Eventbrite there. As always, all of our events are free. You just need to register for them. So on that note, can we just thank Kylie Dunbar, Lisa Allen, and